Begin our meeting for this evening. Thank you to everybody that's here in the audience and anybody who might be online. I will start off with the usual announcement. Citizen comment requests need to be turned in prior to the start of our meeting to determine if 5 minutes per speaker needs to be reduced in order for all requests to be heard. As you recall, we have a maximum period of 30 minutes. The blue speaker request cards can be found in the vestibule and turned into our city clerk. So hopefully you filled those out. I will have the deputy clerk call the clerk. City clerk, sorry, city clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Martinez. Councilmember Skog. Councilmember Swartz.
Present.
Councilmember Madewell.
Present.
And Councilmember Fancher.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Present.
Absent is Mayor Myers and Councilmember Eck.
So I'll entertain a motion to excuse Mayor Myers and Councilmember Eck.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? All right. They are excused. And for this evening, Lisa DeLucci will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Does any council member wish to move a consent agenda item to a business item for individual discussion and vote, or make other modifications for tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. The council invites city comments to hear from the public on matters before the council or relevant to the council's business. The council values free expression of all points of view as an important democratic value in this community. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 5 minutes, depending on the number of people that have requested to speak. So if others have already expressed your views, you may simply indicate that you agree with the previous speaker. The council expects respect for those who have positions with which one may disagree. So debate or interactive discussions are strictly prohibited. Please refrain from applause after each speaker and only address your comments to the council and not to staff or the audience, please. Council may request staff research comments received for potential future action. Please take private conversations outside. And when you are called to speak, please begin with stating your name and city of residence for the record. And then just a reminder to silence your phones. So those don't go off in the middle of somebody speaking, please. Thank you. So we have 6 who are requesting time. And so 5 of them are non-agenda one is an agenda item, so we will give a 5-minute maximum for the 5, and then the 5-minute maximum for the agenda. Okay, so first up, Mr. Lombardi.
Victor Lombardi, Moses Lake. I'd like to discuss the insurance policy of the city. A few insurance agents and vendors have asked me to speak on their behalf. The insurance requirements have been raised from 1 million to 2 million, causing some discernible expense. Now, I'm not here to talk as to whether that should be reduced back to the million or raised to 3 million for that matter. I don't know the reasons why they weren't listed on forms. They don't know why, and we both don't know if there's a specific data to reference or merely a suggestion or recommendation, as was the case in the past with the airport. This is the main issue. And again, not to dismiss this expense that these small businesses have to endure, but it's all about the unintentional relationship that currently exists right now. You see, citizens can't choose between 3 government choices, A, B, and C. There's only one, and it's a monopoly. The citizens have granted you this monopoly. Now, if they had choices like Home Depot, Lowe's, and Ace, they would have a business customer relationship because competition establishes that. But what we have here is a monopoly granted by the citizens. Thus, what we have is a business partnership. And in every business partnership, there must be consideration between the partners. In the late 1800s, common law, English common law, defined it as a right, an interest, and a responsibility. And in this insurance example, the consideration is absent. Now, we're not sure who issued this change. I see on different forms, city manager, I see city risk manager, I see department director. And so we don't know who to speak to. If all of us in city management would be treating the end user as business partners, this would be a lot more clear. So now some city employees and even city council members might find this to be minutia, and you have that right. But some may think that I'm even looking to expose blame or fault. Actually, to the contrary, I do not believe for a second that this is intentional or poor quality of work. But my intent is to solely highlight the absence of this necessary consideration and to change the mindset that the citizens are customers when in reality, they are business partners. As a city, we have both a fiduciary and a fiscal responsibility to provide this consideration, especially since everyone's salary is paid by the citizens' property taxes and sales taxes. So in summary, it's up to you, City Council, to decide how to proceed with this. After all, you set policy and directives. I can't advise you to the decision for the reasons listed previously. Now, there's 4 issues here that come up from this one situation. One is the lack of consideration. 2 is the changing of the mindset in dealing with citizens. 3 is the cost of doing business in Moses Lake. And 4, of course, is the decision itself on whether or not to maintain the 2 million requirement or reduce it back down to 1. Now, just for discussion purposes, for comparison, the county, Grant County, has a 1 million liability clause per occurrence. So they have not raised it to 2 million. Of the different agents that I spoke to, they cannot think of one city in this general area, let's say Central Washington, that has a 2 million requirement. An example of some of the issues here, even down to a mom who wanted to have a birthday party in the Larson Center room, the cost went from $100 to nearly $200, plus the cost of the rental, and then there's a participation fee. So the use of that room, in essence, was not an option. There was a contractor that was awarded a contract with the city, and he was excited about that until he saw the insurance requirement. And he made a statement that he would never do business in Moses Lake again. Now, I'm not making the statement like as an isolated incident. From what I understand, this statement's been made a few times. Lastly, the Moses Lake Downtown Association, which the city does have a distinct relationship with, their cost for insurance went up almost $1,000. So these are pretty significant numbers. But again, I'm not here to try to influence your decision on that, but rather to give you examples of what is taking place. from the agents, the insurance agent standpoint, and the issue of doing business in Moses Lake. It's being somewhat considered cost prohibitive. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I will sit down. Okay, you bet. Thank you.
I will ask, because I have received information about, or questions about this increase in insurance. Who is in charge and how do we have a deeper discussion about that?
So we are insured through the Washington City's Insurance Authority. As are, I think they cover 240 cities in the state, and large cities and small cities all across the state. They are the ones that are insurer, and they're the ones that dictate what that insurance rate is, because they're the ones that are covering losses. And so they're the ones that raised it's 2 million per occurrence, 2 million for, so they're the ones that make that decision. Because we're insured through them, we have to follow their insurance requirements, or we face not having insurance or having to find another insurer.
Okay.
I will tell you that they are the largest, I believe they're the largest city insurer in the state. And part of the reason for the increase is because the state has no cap on liability limits, and they're seeing what they consider what they call nuclear verdicts, where cities and counties alike are ending up with verdicts that are multi-million-dollar verdicts. And so in order to cover their losses, they've got to raise the rates. So that's where we're at. There have been some recent verdicts that are in the dozens. One recently out of Spokane was like $18.5 million. And so because of those nuclear verdicts, they're having to raise the rates. And I sit on, for transparency, I sit on I'm an executive committee member for WCI. I'm one of about a dozen that sit on their executive team. And so I hear the claims and see the increases. So, any questions? I got puzzled looks. No.
So the $2 million increase is not unique to Moses Lake.
Oh, no. Every city that's covered through WCIA has the same coverage.
And is that a majority of cities in Washington?
200, I think it's 240 some. So yeah, like I said, they're the largest insurer of cities in the state.
And they've all experienced the same increase.
Yeah, they got to cover their losses when you get some of these verdicts. So.
When were we notified by our insurance group?
I couldn't tell you that. I think this happened 2 or 3 years ago, honestly. I don't know that our forms were updated when they probably should have been, but this was an issue that happened years ago. And there is a small business owner in town that vends on city property. He was required to get this, and he and I spoke. I sent him a long email explaining why, what the reasoning was. And so I was open with him, just like I am with you guys.
Thank you. Councilmember Swartz?
Yes, anecdotal, but nonetheless, I do look at quite a few, bid documents for public projects. And I will say that the 2 million is pretty common these days. I've seen some projects that go up to 5 million and have like a 5-year rider on that. I don't think that the city has anything near that onerous. And also in my business, we deal with an insurance company that's specific to the construction industry. And I remember that same conversation 3 or 4 years ago that we had with them, that we were encouraged to raise our limit to 2 because that was the way that things were going. So we've carried 2 as a small business for several years now.
All right. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Connie Barnes. I hope I said that right.
Connie Barnes from Moses Lake, West Marina Drive. I'm pretty sure the police department knows me by now. I've sent many emails, photos, and phone calls to them about all the speeding and the squatters on West Marina Drive at our park. Kids are getting almost hit. They have to jump onto the curb and into the bushes to avoid getting hit. My car got totaled by a speeder. Yeah, it's wrecked my whole life. We either need speed traps or we need speed bumps to slow this traffic down. We can only do so much. The squatters need to be removed. There's garbage everywhere. They're pooping in the bushes over there. What are kids supposed to do? They're supposed to enjoy this park. None of us can because it stinks so bad. And the city's not doing a darn thing about it. So that's what I'm requesting. Is the squatters are removed. I was told by the police department that they have more rights than I do. I pay rent. I pay all my bills. Why should I have to deal with this? I'm a disabled senior woman. I'm supposed to be retired. And I can't be retired because I have woke up every night from all the screaming, the drug deals, and everything else going on there. And you guys aren't doing a damn thing about it. That's my issue. Thank you.
Councilmember Scott?
Where on Marine Drive is that? Marine Park. That's a little strip along the lake? Okay. I know there was an RV back behind the, okay. Okay. Now people have moved back there again? Okay. Well, I know that was brought to my attention about a month. That was brought to my attention about a month ago, and that was relayed to Kevin. And
Yeah, ma'am, if
okay.
you want to, yep.
I had just driven by there just a couple days ago, and that had been cleaned up behind that apartment.
Oh, no. Oh, no. You need to go back by there tonight.
Okay.
Garbage everywhere. They did remove one camper, but now the motorhome's back there. There's cars in and out of that property all day, all night, every 5 to 15 minutes.
And that behind
They go
those,
in the
that,
motorhome, they come back out with their hands full of shit and they leave.
okay.
I'm done. I had one officer ask me if I had a weapon. Told him no. Well, maybe you want to get one. I said, no, you don't want to know why? Because I'd shoot somebody. My safety is jeopardized. And I shouldn't have to deal with this. None of us should have to deal with this. And it's your guys' responsibility to do something. And nothing's being done.
Deputy Mayor, could I just, so we can continue on, just have the interim chief to it and have his staff take care of whatever needs to be taken care of.
Yes, I see him taking
He's
notes.
taking notes right now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Thank you. Mr. Andrew Copen is next.
As a preliminary note, please be aware that the information I'm presenting about the water usage in Moses Lake may contain errors. For more reliable data, I strongly advise that the city's own staff conduct further research and provide detailed statistical analysis.
Yeah. Excuse me, Mr. Copen, can
Oh.
you identify yourself and what the city
Sorry.
that you live in, please?
My
Thank you.
name is Andrew Copen. I live in Pelican Point, Moses Lake. So a couple of weeks ago, I requested water billing information to identify top water users in Moses Lake. Yesterday evening, I received the first set of information, and here's some of my initial findings for the top 18 users. For these 18 water users, 8 are industrial users, and they account for 61% of the water usage of the top 18. A single mobile home park used 12% of the water, but it's serving 197 units, so making its use fairly reasonable. Moses Lake Clinic uses about 1% of the water. Moses Lake School District uses another 5%. And Moses Lake City with 5 meters uses 21% of the water, making it among the top users in Moses Lake. Regarding billing for the top 18 water users, the school district contributed 7% of the total revenue. Industrial users paid 67%. The mobile home park paid 11%. And Moses Lake City, despite using 21% of the water, contributed only 13% of the total bill among the top 18 users. Putting this into numerical perspective, the city of Moses Lake paid approximately 0.006 cents per cubic foot of water. The mobile home park paid 0.01 cents. Industries paid 0.012. Moses Lake School District paid 0.015. And Moses Lake Clinic paid the highest at 0.02 cents per cubic foot. In real numbers, the city paid $141,694 for water consumption. If billed like Industries, it would be approximately 80% higher. And if billed like the Moses Lake Clinic, its bill would be 187% more. Now, here's a measurable challenge I would like to make to the city of Moses Lake. Let's aim to reduce the 3-year rolling average of water use of the city by 5%. This reduction would be equivalent to 340 typical residents reducing their water consumption by 50% and also save the city $7,000. 2 effective ways the city can reduce water consumptions are by installing centralized sprinkler controllers for all irrigation and implementing water conservation landscaping techniques. The continuous improvement paradigm suggests implementing the simplest, quickest solutions that have the biggest impact. A simple 5% reduction of the top 18 water users would be equivalent to nearly 1,600 households reducing their water usage by 50%. To show their commitment to water reduction, I strongly urge City Council to appoint someone who can swiftly study and implement effective strategies to reduce the city's own water usage while fostering positive communications with other large water users to help them implement strategies to reduce their water usage. Several sessions ago, City Council enacted a bylaw to reduce water use of Moses Lake residents, implementing every other day water use. It was assumed that this measure aimed to achieve a water use reduction of 25 to 50%. Lastly, and this is in good humor, so please take it that way, I pose a challenge to any council member who voted to pass the last water ordinance. If you can demonstrate a reduction in water use resulting from the ordinance by the end of this year, I'll happily buy you a steak dinner. However, if you can't, you'll owe me a steak dinner. This lighthearted bet just serves as a reminder that in addition to asking the right questions, we need accurate information and reliable statistics to implement effective policies that actually achieve their intended goals, instead of doing things just to make us feel like we're doing something with no information to back it up. Thank you.
Mr. Copen, I had a question or clarification. So is that you're challenging city council members about their personal water
No,
use?
I'm challenging the city of Moses
okay.
Lake.
Because I was going to take you up on that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
easy. I'm talking about the city of Moses Lake, because really, if the city of Moses Lake just dropped it by 5%, that's almost like 180, 190 people dropping it, or 180, 190 average users dropping their water by 50%. It makes a big deal. And in continuous improvement, you try to hit the biggest one. And last time, I think the city said there's several water meters or water irrigation areas that do not have automated turn off and turn on. So this is a simple thing. We could save $7,000 in 1 year. And I don't understand why the city is charging itself for water, but that's a moot point.
I do believe that there are conversations to be switching to automated sprinklers when we can, wherever we can.
Right.
Yep. So thank you. Mr. Nolan, you're up.
Good evening. I'm Jeremy Nolan, City of Moses Lake, and I appreciate your time this evening. Wanted to talk real quick about the last city council meeting. There was a movement of $4 million towards improvement of water availability. Specifically, they're targeting a couple of the wells that are not currently functioning. So first, I applaud the adherence to, looking at things that are significant problems, right? And water is a big problem here in Moses Lake, both short-term and long-term. So thank you for that. What I want to do is I want to understand like what we're getting for that and what we're giving up for that. So first, is there an estimate of like how much improvement in water availability that $4 million movement is actually getting us? Both, is it going to give us additional water this summer? Is it going to be next summer? Is going to move what, how much additional water availability and when is that happening for $4 million? And the second follow-up from that is, what are we giving up for that $4 million? Where was that $4 million expected to be used at? And what are we not getting for that now? So we can understand as the public what the impact of moving that $4 million really is. Thank you.
Councilmember Swartz, Chair, if you don't mind, Mr. Nolan, staying at the podium if there are questions.
I think you had a political forum last week, so now the roles are reversed here and you're asking us questions, which
Yes,
that's great. And I'm going to attempt to answer those. I don't know that we've made any formal plans with the movement of that money or that it's set in concrete that it will be spent for that. In fact, I believe my thinking was any money that we can get to help out the water situation, we should earmark for that. We've been asking for plans for how to get more wells or reservoirs or filters. That's a conversation we have all the time. So we're zeroing in sort of on the scope and scale of that project and what that would look like. But that's a moving target. But again, the money hasn't been earmarked for this is going to be a well that we're putting in this location. But the money's just as flexible as it was before, essentially. And I don't believe it was ARPA funds that were provided to us during COVID, which so many other municipalities received as well. And I don't believe those funds were dedicated necessarily to anything, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were earmarked for other projects. But $2 million was earmarked for Cascade Valley water sewer, but that is so much higher than what we could fund. So we just decided to allocate that into the water. And Councilmember Swartz is correct. There's not a specific project right now that's going towards. It's just earmarked for water funds. So whatever gets us the most availability the quickest, we can put money towards that project.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Fancher.
I was just going to say a similar comment, and I think the last, if I recall, the last conversation in regard, and it might have been a few meetings ago when we talked about those two shallow wells that we have that we need to get online as quickly as possible, shore us up substantially. What was the output between them was like 5 million gallons or 5,000 gallon, 5,000. The heck was it?
Sorry, hopefully it doesn't scream at me. So between the two wells, it'd be about 2,300 gallons a minute.
Okay.
Which translates to 2.5-ish million gallons a day.
Yeah. Which is a substantial need, and those wells are both about there, other than, I mean, we have a battle with EPA on one, but the other one is a matter of the filtration, and we're progressing as fast as we can on that.
Yes, we are to the point of doing the DOH required pilot testing, which means we run a small scale version of the treatment train we want to use to demonstrate its viability with our particular water chemistry. And then once we can do that, then once we demonstrate through that testing, then we can develop final plans and go to bid. So right now our schedule is we we are trying to be ready to construct next year. It's going to take several months for the pilot testing to be completed. We'll be well into the winter months. And so that's the well out there by Blue Heron Park. And then the other well that we're working on is out by the Port of Moses Lake. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we will move on to summary reports, Deputy Mayor's report. I don't have anything much to say other than primaries coming up. August 1st is when your ballots need to be turned in, either by mail or there's a nice convenient mailbox just back here that you can drop them in. But I encourage everybody to vote. Voting is important. So that's my report. And next item is, does council wish to have any business brought to a future meeting? Councilmember Scott?
I would like to bring a discussion about cleaning up the debris left by homeless and how we're going to fund that and to appropriate that and get it going.
You mean citywide or particular?
Now, I don't know if that becomes a form of a motion, and but I know we talked about having some funds available and not requiring whoever the poor landowner was who happened to get their stuff dumped on them. But I strongly feel that cleanup, there's some stuff behind right across the street from Safeway that's been there for months. There's some stuff down on Marina Drive. Right as you stop down the hill on the left side, there's a tree that was recently vacated. Yep, all this debris was left. Another thing that's been brought to my attention is that a lot of these strollers, a lot of the stuff that's coming, the trash that's being spread throughout town is coming from the Goodwill drop box. A lot of the baby strollers that we see, if they don't need it at Goodwill, it goes into their dumpster. And they raid the dumpsters at night and then pack it all through town. And I think we need to address, they either need to put a lid on that and lock it. And that's their garbage that is being spread throughout town and they need to deal with it. So I don't know exactly where or how that's going to happen, but I think we need to either get the city, I mean, some of the monies that we've had talked about and make sure those are available either to departments or to subcontractors who, I know there's been people who've come out and I don't think you can pick it up with your hands, but just a little thumbed backhoe and a dumpster and we got to clean up the garbage.
Do we need any official business to?
Well, to bring it back, we need at least, well, 3 of you to say yes.
Yes,
I think
I would just
we have
add to that if I can.
consensus. Huh?
Can I just add to that graffiti be included in that as well? I think we talked about that a few meetings ago. So
Yes.
I had one more thing. I had a question regarding back to the dumpster deal. Because I have a dumpster in the back of my office and was getting things dropped in my dumpster that were definitely not dropped by me. And I'm just wondering if there is any ability to make people lock those. Because in my case, it was pretty simple. Somebody dropped a bunch of oil and things like that. And Lakeside was very nice to me and said, that is a huge fine on you. You might want to lock them. And I said, yeah, I think so. Which I do. And you have to provide them, it's the proper lock and all the other stuff, but it wasn't expensive.
Yeah, and I think Lakeside actually has the locks that they will give to you to lock a dumpster. I know the gentleman that owns Polaris here behind us, he was having the same issues with his dumpster and he just got a lock through Lakeside or might have been Basin Disposal. And They're locking, he locks the
And
dumpster.
mine wasn't people diving in, it was what they were putting in my
Yeah.
dumpster.
Is there a specific code that requires businesses
No.
to lock them though?
No. This is just for them to do, just to keep people out or to keep people from dumping stuff.
Right. Free dumping.
Yeah.
All right, so we have consensus to go ahead and bring this up officially at another, at a future city council meeting. Okay, all right. Anything else that any of our council members would like to add to a future meeting? Okay, on to city manager's report, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll first start with Chief Ashton, who's got a new employee to introduce.
Jeff, if you would stand up. I'd like to introduce Jeff Vandergiesen. Jeff is our new fire marshal. Jeff joined the fire service at the age of 16 as a volunteer firefighter with Grant County Fire District 3. He's a graduate from Quincy High School. After high school, he enrolled in the Fire Science Technology program at Spokane Community College, graduating from that program in 1989. He also graduated from the Reserve Law Enforcement Academy here in Grant County in 1993. And he served as a reserve officer with Soap Lake PD, Grant County Sheriff's Office, and Moses Lake PD. After moving back to Moses Lake, after college, he became a resident firefighter with Grant County Fire District 5, and eventually was offered a full-time job with the Port of Moses Lake Fire Department, where he worked for 16 years. Since that time, Jeff has worked in chemical manufacturing, wearing many different hats, including operations, emergency response, and health and safety. He's married to his wife, Tanya, for the last 20 years. He has 2 adult children, Nicole and Michael. And we were lucky enough to steal Jeff away from one of our local industries and bring him on board as our technical expert in hazardous materials for our industrial corridors. Jeff Vandergiesen.
Thank you, Chief.
Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Next I have, this is resolution 3945, Phillips 76 has given the city $50,000 to purchase the new air packs for the fire department. And so hopefully you've all had a chance to read that. I would need a motion and a second from the board or from the council to accept the donation.
I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 3945. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank
I
you.
guess I skipped the discussion. I wasn't going to let them discuss it.
Not much of a discussion there. Next is, you saw in some information about the police department. We're putting it up there for the public to see right now. Don't get wrapped up around the community services building language up there. Where the gray front is right there, you will see when we build it, it'll say Moses Lake Police Department. My goal is to put our core values up there: professionalism, integrity, compassion, and service, so people see that immediately as they walk into the building. So we worked with the architect on the floor plan. For us, the floor plan is the most important part of the building. It's exactly how we want it with the functionality that we were looking for. The outside looks nice. I know some council members expressed that they would like it to be a little more, maybe not so blocky, but frankly, blocky is budget conscious, and we were being very budget conscious when we designed the outside. The inside is the most important part. The more bends and breaks and the more expensive it gets. So we try to keep it simple so that we could get what we needed inside. You saw also the estimate which brought up last meeting and some other documents in there. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer, but I just wanted to give the public a first crack at it. And again, don't worry about the wording above the door. Questions? Or if not, I'll move on. Last thing I have is in your packet is the first quarter budget report. Thank you to Madeline, Finance Director, for putting that together for us. we're sitting in good shape. Well, hopefully things will look a little bit better in second quarter, but we're on track right now. So any questions on that? Deputy Mayor, that is the city manager's reports.
Okay, I need to take a step back and I apologize to Alicia DeLuigi because I forgot you. You got lost in all of this paper up here, so we'll go back to citizen comment or citizen communication.
I just thought there was a miscommunication, and when I said to put me last, I
No,
thought
yeah.
you very, very last.
No, I got lost in.
No problem, no problem. Hi, everybody. Alicia DeLuigi, Lisa from Moses Lake. Thank you for being here. Again, you're doing a great job leading. So keep up the good work. I hope that all of you guys get trained up to be able to do that, to lead the meetings. Okay, so I just gotta say, with regards to the homeless, I can't emphasize enough the reason why you want to designate a spot. And I highly advise for you guys to speak to your attorney and do some further research with regards to designating funds, city funds for the graffiti and garbage cleanup on private areas, because it's a violation of the law. What it does is it's called this is the closest that I can remember what it's called, but it's something on the lines of accepting gifts through public funds. And it's a big time no. So I advise you guys to further look into that, because I know from other places, it's a big time no. I would also like to ask the city council to look into giving you guys a pay increase. And I'm the citizen, I have full rights to ask of that because you guys get stipends, but the amount of workload you're currently doing far exceeds any stipend that you're getting by a lot. So I ask that you please take that consideration seriously and start looking into that. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of other citizens that would agree with me on that. And if we have to take a public poll, let's do it. My meeting with Patty Marie and Maria Cantwell's office, there's a new staff person in Cantwell's office that I met today that I'll be working with, but I let them know that we are in dire need of some drinking water infrastructure care. And I believe it's Representative Dent that I highly encourage you guys keep in contact with him and have him continue to work with those senators and finding that money, because there's money out there. It's just a matter of finding it. And I know there was 133 million. I don't know if that door is closed. Let's see. Oh, also there's a opioid settlement that we should be getting pretty soon. And from Bob Ferguson's office, they sent me over the list, and Grant County is getting about 3 million. And the city of Moses Lake is going to be getting about 833,000. It's not going to be one chunk. It'll be in increments throughout a few years. I would like at this time to ask that the city council work with the county commissioners, and maybe you guys do a collab gig with those funds, so that people aren't double dipping, and that the funding through the county of Grant as well as the city of Moses Lake will be appropriated properly. So I wish I could have executive session with you guys. This is a red flag immediate, please. With regards to the new construction money in the levy, we might have possibly lost that funding. And what will happen is it will exclude new construction valuations. And evidently our city manager was working on fixing some of those. I believe there was about 27. And unfortunately, with her departure, that has fallen through the cracks. And I don't know if the deadline's already surpassed, because that was recently brought to my attention. But it not only affects the city of Moses Lake and the taxpayers, but everything in the tax district. We're talking police, we're talking fire, we're talking hospital, we're talking the schools, anything in construction. And just through skimming through the larger major development areas, there's at least 3 huge developments that are going on that are going to be grossly affected by this as well. So I highly encourage
make it a priority tomorrow to get a hold of our county assessor, Melissa McKnight, and find out what's going on and if there's anything that we can do, or if that door is already closed, because that's a huge problem if that door closed. Does anybody have any questions?
Councilmember Scott?
Hi, Lisa. I have a couple questions. The money, the $3 million, 833,000, that's coming from where and when will we get that?
Okay, so our Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, when they had, what had happened was with the opioids settlement, they sued like the big pharma and the Sackler family and stuff. And a bunch of attorney generals in different states all got together and sued them. And in the mediation process or whatnot, each state was awarded so much money. And I'm not sure where the allocation on a state level came from. I just was given the list of all the different counties and cities. And of course, it was like 500 pages. So I just went straight to see what Grant County got. And Moses Lake and this county of Grant both got those funds. And I can send you over the exact numbers all the way down to the penny, but it approximates to be about $4 million. And we are the biggest city in the county of Grant. So that's good that we're getting that 833,000. And it's almost 3 million that the county will be getting, but we should also be working with the county to get allocated some of that funding as well, since we're the biggest city and we have the greatest need.
Okay, and one other comment was, I'm real adamant about the city owning the garbage, and I don't care whose property is on. So if we need to get something written up that say the city has allowed this to happen and we own the garbage, and if it's ours, we'll get it moved. I'm adamantly opposed to saying that is the building, the property owner's problem to clean up the mess that we have not dealt with. So as far as if that's illegal, I would like to see what it takes to make it legal that we can pick up the garbage, because I think it's the city's responsibility.
So the solution for that is, and I agree with you, I'm extremely disappointed. And I mean, back in the days, I had to be the one that asked, at the time it was Mayor Colonel. I was like, I don't want to be the one to bring this up, but where are they going to the bathroom? And so we were able to start off getting porta potties. So, cause I don't want Moses Lake to look like or smell like Seattle. We can have ordinances, but county trumps any ordinances we have. State trumps any ordinances we have, and county ordinances. That's trump anything the state has as well as the county. So we could pass an ordinance, it's still going to be against the law, because I believe that it is a state legislation issue, which I highly encourage if you want to make those changes, to talk to Tom and Alex and Judy, and they're absolutely fantastic in helping at least propose the legislation. But there's a lot of politics that occur. So while you might have a good idea, if you don't have the backup behind it to get those numbers, to get things passed, then sometimes it doesn't even get tabled. But you'd want to talk to them with regards to looking at the state laws. And you guys have an amazingly competent attorney who could give you the specific RCW, probably not right now, but send you guys the specific RCW with regards to it, because it's actually a pretty big thing. Or you could consult with the ethics division, the state of ethics division, through the Attorney General's office, where they'd be able to give you like super mega pinpoint stuff as well. They just can't consult, but they could guide you to where you need to go for finding those answers. But it's kind of like how people can get in. If you're an elected official and you accept gifts, it can be considered and construed a bribe. And it's a pretty big spanking. I just don't have all of that off the top of my head, because when one of the speakers had addressed it and then you further talked about it, it kind of, I was like, oh gosh, I better let them know. So I am in agreement. I don't want trash. I am in agreement that I want it cleaned up. I'm in agreement that we need to find things. Maybe we can get some community volunteers and safety gear or something to be able to properly clean it up. But I'm not in agreement with violating the laws.
Thank you. Thank you. And clearly we'll be speaking more about this. To your question, Councilmember Scog, about the drug money, for lack of a better term. We do get a percentage, and we do have something going on with the monies that were allocated to our city. So we're already working on that. So.
Yeah, it's the most emergent thing is actually the new construction money that we might have lost.
Okay, getting back on track. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. All items listed are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, on to old business, and I will give the floor to Kirsten Peterson, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. Tonight before you, we're going to just dive back into the development code update. We've talked about this at previous meetings, and I guess really I'm referring to it now as a development code rewrite. We are going to be just basically starting over with an entirely new code. We're not just editing or revising it. We are putting together a brand new development code. And it looks like they've already got me ready to go with this. But during the City Council meeting of July 11th, 2023, we provided an update, let you know that we'd be doing a public participation plan. So the point of this meeting is to share that plan with you. It's 4 pages. I shared it with the, we have a subcommittee council subcommittee meeting for community development and public works once a month. And we talked about it a little bit today. So we've developed this plan. It's right here before you. And really it starts with an introduction that we're going to take titles 14 through 20 of the code, create one new unified development code. So it talks about the goal in here. And then oops, sorry, I scrolled a little bit too far. I explained earlier that I was trying to make this a little bit easier to read. It's only about 4 pages long. There are some public participation outcomes that we want. We want to have a public involvement process that provides clear information to the public on the purpose of the code, how the update process works, have public meetings and events designed to provide opportunities for all interested parties to participate, be heard, for people to hear from other folks on the same topic, make sure there's opportunities for broad participation. And a lot of it's about going to people where they are, but also hosting information online and with events and just finding out the best connectors in the community, whether it's people or events or groups of who we need to go to. Also talk about making sure the process is transparent. We're going to document all the public input, make it available to anyone to review. And ideally that will lead toward a better decision-making process by the time it arrives back at your desk. So we're going to have several audiences, and we've just listed them generically, not by name exactly, names of folks, but community members, including residents, property owners, business owners, stakeholders. Those are the folks that use the development code on a regular basis. So that's developers, contractors, any other users of the code. The elected and appointed officials, so yourselves, along with the planning commission, who's the advisory board to you, they'll make a recommendation on this. Some non-city service providers, such as Grant County Transit, the Port, Grant County PUD, and we can add to this list if anyone wants to do that as well. Non-governmental organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Association, we need to fix that, sorry about that. The Moses Lake Downtown Association, and various service-oriented clubs like Kiwanis and Rotary. And then also the state and regional and other local governments, and that would include Grant County, the DOT, Department of Commerce, Ecology, Fish and Wildlife, Archaeology and Historic Preservation, and the Colville Tribes. And then in here, we just kind of, whoop, this mouse is going a little quickly here, describes the role of the decision makers yourselves. You guys are the final decision-making body on adoption of the new code. So we'll keep you apprised as we go through this, but we want to make sure there's plenty of opportunities for the public throughout the process. So by the time it gets to you, it will be a transparent and known thing that's occurring. The Planning Commission is listed out here. They'll provide the recommendations to this group. They are already starting to review drafts of the code and will be giving their feedback. The Community Development Department, we will be hosting all of the meetings and putting together any events and pulling together the stakeholder groups. And then the role of the public is listed out. So through the efforts of this project, we'll be trying to make sure we're reflecting the values, the core values that the community identified during the adoption of the comprehensive plan, but also just moving forward as we start hearing from folks. So during this process, we just want to make sure that we make community participation as accessible as possible. So that's what this is getting at. So the methods and tools for that they'll vary based on what we're going to do. And so we've got a list of community outreach efforts and methods. So a little bit of descriptor here. There's a couple tables, but just starting with public open houses and meetings, going to existing community activities and events, hosting some of our own, having focus events where we might pull together a group of folks in a similar industry to talk about it, having one-on-one interviews, public hearing, which of course are requirements with the Planning Commission and yourselves, and then also opportunities for folks to just provide public comments. So some of those communication tools would be just the written materials, which is code, and any other informational handouts we provide, FAQs, PowerPoints, things like that. We'll have an interested parties list. So as people start to learn more, we would collect their contact information and make sure we're able to either have an email newsletter, or we're looking also to have an online community engagement platform that's shown right here. That's a tool that would allow us to have a variety of mechanisms for surveys and people to share just general input and things like that. So we're going to be pulling that together pretty soon. And that would be its own standalone web page, but we'd also on the city's page, we'd make sure information was there that would refer you to this other page. And then we'd of course use social media, which is so standardized now. We'd use social media to direct people to the online platform and noticing about events, et cetera. And then of course, newspaper noticing and advertising. The final page just notes that with the tracking, we'll make sure we log all the public participation events, meetings, events, and actions that the city engages in to make sure we're tracking everything we did to ensure participation. And then the conclusion, with the desired outcome, is that council will adopt, a public participation plan. I'm not necessarily asking for you to do this at this meeting. I actually would like to add to this a little bit more. We are going to be developing a schedule. I want to put a little bit of information about the schedule in there. The Planning Commission made a recommendation to forward this to you, but wanted to keep it a living document that we could add to and revise. But at the same point, probably don't want to wait too long to officially adopt this. And by having this in place, it just kind of complies with some of the GMA requirements regarding public participation. And it gives us a plan of action for moving forward. So that's in your packets. Obviously, I'm scrolling through it. And then just another reminder of where we're at with the code. So this right here provides the actual divisions that we're currently writing right now. And it's not just like a table of contents. It's that, but it also tells you how far along we are. So you have Division 1, general provisions, the title and the purpose and the user guide for the code. And then in the second column, it says the draft is complete with initial input from CDD, which means Community Development Department staff. So we've had a lot of time looking over that first division. Division 2 is our development review and enforcement, and it talks about procedures for applying for various permits. And we're going with 4 permit types. And depending on the type, it tells you if we can approve it administratively, or if it needs to go to the city council or the hearing examiner. And so there's just different steps depending on the level of complexity for the projects. And so each of those just states like how far along we are with the code. And we're going to start getting this stuff out there for public consumption in the very, very near future. Division 3 is the zoning districts and land use. We'll be reviewing that with the Planning Commission in August. That is where you've got your various zoning districts described, and you've got the charts that say which uses are allowed in each of the zoning districts. Are they allowed? Are they not allowed? You need a conditional use permit to get them. So we've been analyzing the boundaries of the zoning districts and the allowed uses. And I know that's the kind of thing that a lot of folks are interested in. That's the kind of thing we'll definitely want to seek public input on and talk to the planning commissioners about. So then we've got residential district standards, supplemental standards. You know, this gets into whether it's single family homes, multifamily, manufactured homes, accessory dwelling units, which is an emerging thing. And then we go into non-residential and mixed use standards. So for your commercial and your industrial type uses. And that just tells you a variety, like what are the landscaping requirements? What are, you know, building open space requirements, setbacks, things like that. What we have not completed yet, and we're going to be launching soon, and this is something we'll go and ask the community for, you know, input on. So we're to a stage where we're going to still be writing, but then going back to get feedback on everything that's been drafted so far. So we're going to be looking at streetscapes, design, subdivision and block structure, open space, downtown design standards for our area that's designated downtown, just right outside the door here. And then standards for commercial transition. And then after that, we also have project design standards. And that's about site orientation, site planning and design elements, building design, off-street parking, which is a thing that people always want to know more about, landscaping requirements. You know, for instance, you definitely have different landscaping requirements in the industrial zone versus a commercial zone. And so getting to look at that. And these are the types of opportunities that I think people will really be interested in. And so we'll be trying to design some surveys that include pictures for people to choose, you know, what look do they prefer, you know, aesthetically, but not just that, but functionality. So right now, Stormwater is looking at putting together some options for the planter strips, because while there's a push to have the nice look, there's challenges with stormwater as well. And so it might be a matter of having different design standards for different types of streets. So those are the kinds of things that will come forward. So we also need to work on signs, SEPA, and then the critical area ordinance. And that typically includes frequently flooded areas, wetlands, fish and wildlife habitat. That's really buffers of streams. And we don't have much of that around here. Critical aquifer recharge areas, geologically hazardous areas, which is like steep slopes. And there's a lot of model, like just state model ordinances on those in particular, because they just have very specific requirements at the state level. So we'll probably just borrow some templates for that. And we'll try to be clear on what areas of the code folks have an opportunity to participate, and then what the state is like mandating. You just have to follow these criteria. So, but we're also going to be relying on those community experts like the developers and pull together a stakeholder group. In our meeting earlier today, we discussed who we'd like to invite, and just getting going on some developer meetings and asking for volunteers, seeing if we can get enough representation to represent what the developer community is seeing, because they're the ones that use the code regularly. So if you guys would like to give me any input right now or just later with the public participation plan, make any edits to it, you can let me know. But this is more for review, comment, and then we can adopt it, you know, maybe in August, get that going forward. The public participation plan itself.
I have one question. I know online you can change the language to your preference when you're reading something, but what about these public meetings, in-person public meetings, as far as our Spanish speaking or Ukrainians or any other, you know, non-English speaking citizens, if they want to participate, or any of the handouts, if you're going to have handouts, has that been considered?
Yeah, and so with the community engagement platform, the several that are out there, a lot of them allow you to change the language. You can go into settings to do that for whoever the user is, but depending on our audiences, we would definitely make sure there's translation services available. I think we'd want to, as we get going with events, I think we would definitely want to make sure there's Spanish speaking for sure to begin with, and then doing some deliberate outreach to their different demographics and making sure that's available for sure.
All right, thank you.
And actually I'm glad you brought that up. I can add that into the public participation plan, that we would make that available.
All right, thanks. Councilmember Scott?
Kirsten, I can't imagine having to take on a project of that scope. I'm glad you're doing it. A couple things though. I would like to see outreach specifically to the permit holders over the last year and interview them and say what worked well and what didn't work well. I'd also like to see their input on where else they have built projects and say, you know, I keep hearing Walla Walla has a great building code. I don't think we have to invent the wheel, but I think if we can, you know, plagiarize other people's work that works, that's a good way to go. I also think that we could, particularly when it comes to regulations outside of our area, like from the top down, I would like to literally come up with a minimalist attitude about those and say, we'll do the minimum they require as far as where a place to start rather than at the top of their scale and go down from there. I'd rather start at the bottom and go up. Another one would be if we have projects that get started and if there's a code change or a code interpretation that causes that project to be shut down, I'd like to come up with some dollar amount, an impact that it is impacting that project and have the city council involved in the decisions about what stops what. I know that's probably, I mean, I know we talked about, you know, some landscaping this week and that was neat that got resolved, but that's a couple $1,000 decision. There are decisions that are made that are hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars that impact some of the heavy commercial stuff that goes on. And I think, I know I would like to be part of a decision that stops that project rather than getting a phone call saying it got stopped. How come? So I think that's just part of the whole transparency, but those are some things I'd like to see go into this code writing or rewriting effort.
Well, and those are great comments. I've written them all down. And I think that last point you brought up, ideally, a lot of that will be solved by having a streamlined code and a process that's easy to follow when we're trying to minimize the number of steps to follow. And the first thing you brought up with I think the second one, regulations outside our purview, we are going to be going down a path of looking at the steps to change some of those thresholds even before we get to the whole code rewrite. Yeah.
Good.
So these are great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Yeah, a couple comments. We talked about this earlier today, but I thought of a couple things. One being the fact that building continues to occur in the city. And, you know, I think that as a result of us having a new comprehensive plan, the building and development community at large is aware that these changes are occurring. And so I think we need to be mindful of that. Unfortunately, we can't complete this whole process in a month even, or, you know, it's going to take the rest of the year. And we're growing at quite a clip right now. And my concern is that, especially in light of maybe some of these people that will have involved in the process, that it may be a source of frustration for those people who have permits right now or who will be pulling permits in the midst of this process. Where I'm going with that is I hope we can somehow, and I'm sure there is a legal mechanism for doing this during what you would consider a transitional period, that we can have some latitude in how certain permit applications are processed. You know, the conditional use permit and things like that. I appreciate the attempt to follow the letter of the law as we have it written now, but unfortunately, you know, past practices, there's been some more latitude taken by the AHJ. And so the building community got, used to a certain way of doing things. Again, I think everybody wants to move toward a code that's more workable for everybody, but there is this period that we have right now. And so I think it's a source of frustration today. And so hopefully that's sort of taken into consideration as we go forward with this. Can't remember what the other thing I was going to say was, but that's probably enough.
Okay, got those notes as well. Thank you for your sharing.
So for myself, who doesn't live in the development world, if developers are filing permits or requesting permits, that business is still going on while this is going on.
Oh, yeah.
Was that the point that you're trying to make? Is that, okay?
Sorry, the point being that, again, let's say you have a builder who, 2 weeks ago or whatever, went to one of these things and said, oh, we talked about landscaping 2 weeks ago, and we know that we're going to be able to put in all of this, drought resistant, whatever, and save a bunch of water, but it's not written into the code yet, but that's how we want to do the application. I hope that there's some way of being able to capture that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah.
I now remember the other thing real quickly is just hopefully there's a special emphasis on looking at the fees that we charge. One thing that was brought to my attention, for instance, is how we charge for a water hookup. And that's on a percentage basis. It was suggested that we may look at a per foot cost or something of that nature, maybe with a minimum charge, and then a per foot cost above and beyond that would be more fair.
Okay, and those, we can look at that. That's not typically, the fees aren't typically listed in the code itself, but we'll
I
refer
know
to other
that.
documents. Otherwise, you have to update it annually. But that can be looked at as we're analyzing the entire process.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
So-
you.
Councilmember Scott?
Just another comment on the fees is I think those have to be something that is real transparent and reproducible. That it's not capricious or fiat, but this is how we do what we do and why we do it, and this is what it's going to cost. I know sometimes there's been some comments about where that number come from. So I'd like to make sure that becomes real apparent and make that apparent at the very beginning, not in the midstream somewhere.
Makes sense. We know that most folks come to us in advance trying to understand all the parameters of their project so they can budget. Is this project going to fly? That's why we have pre-application meetings and try to talk through that, but we don't necessarily talk about the costs of those meetings. So we can try to put together some FAQs and some better information up front.
And one more thing, I feel like Columbo. I'm glad to see that there's a new fire marshal. He left already. Okay, and I think that sometimes those things, and I know we've talked with Brett about that, of that process and your process happening concurrently as opposed to sequentially, which can get things going faster. And I think that would be a good goal to make those happen that way. Yeah.
And that's the ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a goal.
All right, any further questions, comments from council? And we'll go on to new business, and Kirsten, you're up again.
All right, just taking one more note.
Oh, actually, I'll give you a moment to pause because I have Mr. Alvarado, citizen comment, like his time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Council. So Gil Alvarado, PO Box 260, Moses Lake. Appreciate community development sending out notice that the comp plan amendment applications were on the agenda tonight. So I am here representing Jenks Holding, which is one of the applications in your packet. I'm the agent for the Jenks Holding Group. Sean Jenks is here with me this evening as well. And really, I think the intent of being here is being available to you if you have any questions. Really wasn't sure of the format. I know the applications are in front of you. You have some that are a heavy lift for sure. Our application, again, in the packet is a request to amend the land use designation from that R2 in essence to an R3, so a medium residential to high density. Included in the packet was really just citing some of the comp plan provisions that the council adopted, which are currently in place. Maybe if I could just back up for a minute. The Jinx Holding Group, their footprint is here. For reference, Basin Refrigeration is one of the parent companies. We also have involvement with the REC project, the expansion. We also have some industrial pieces out in the Real Corridor area, also Black Rock Ranches. So these folks are involved in the community. The Jinxes are looking to expand their footprint more into the residential end of things. So that's what prompted the request for this particular piece. It's an undeveloped piece right across from the Lozier project, park project. Really here to answer any questions. We know we'll have a discussion with the commission if this moves forward. I think the last thing I would add is obviously the legislature was taking into consideration housing issues. On the 23rd, House Bill 1110 became effective. Moses Lake is a tier 2 jurisdiction. I'm sure community development has probably talked to you a little bit about that. In essence, it allowed some flexibility in the densities. So with a tier 2 jurisdiction, which is 25,000, but less than 75,000. In essence, if you're near some sort of transit stop, the jurisdiction could adopt something that would allow, again, typically that traditional zoning was single family, but it would bump it up to 4 units. So in this case, we're looking at an existing density of 2 units because it's R2. This would move that needle, if you will. Point being is I think that there is movement out there to try to address some of this middle housing, and that's kind of what we're trying to do as well. So do you have any questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I think as I present the information tonight, his project will make a little bit more sense, and you might end up wanting to invite him back again to speak to you. But what I'm going to present to you tonight is the annual docketing cycle. So per the Growth Management Act, the cities and counties are required to update their comprehensive plan periodically. It's every 8 years. And ours was adopted in 2021. And thereafter that, we were allowed to amend it 1 time annually. All right. We won't look at the map just yet. So what we're talking about tonight is we're going to review several of the proposals that were submitted to the city, one at a time. And so what we do is we advertise that we have an application process, and by code, anyone can submit an application or a request to amend the comprehensive plan by March 31st. This year, we actually did push it out. We put an advertisement in the paper that it could go out through the end of April instead, give people a little bit more time. And so we actually did not do this cycle last year just because we had come on the heels of adopting the plan at the end of 2021. And then we were going through that potential appeal at the Growth Management Board and potentially repealing the plan and then deciding to just leave the urban growth area alone. So a couple of them were held over from last year. So upon completing this introduction, we're going to ask you to docket, tell staff which items you'd like to docket for this year. If there's any that you feel should be deferred into next year, you can make that motion as well. And I'm going to go through them individually. And then what will happen is we will take each of those proposals, evaluate them, provide a detailed analysis, looking at our city regulations, state regulations, and we will end up preparing all of the amendments and giving that information to the appropriate parties. So what we end up doing is if somebody recommended a change, whether it's to a map, we'll make the amendments to the map. And if they're requesting an amendment to the text itself of the comprehensive plan, we'll make all those edits. And then we actually are required to do a SEPA review on that. Then we also need to send it to the Department of Commerce because they have to approve our comprehensive plan. They have to have a 60-day notice, and we'd send it at the same time as we started SEPA. Then we'll hold a public hearing with the planning commission, get their recommendation, and then bring it back to you for the final review and a potential adoption. So what I'm going to ask from you guys at the end of this is that you make a motion on each. What I found is easiest is to make a motion on each of the proposals. Like, yes, please move forward with it. So right now you're just kind of getting a snippet summary. It's not the actual amendments themselves. Some of them, like a map, it's pretty obvious what they want to do. Some of the requests are to change text. And if you want us to move forward with that, we will do that. So this is a really long portion of the packet. So I'm going to give you page numbers, but I'm also going to scroll through this. And the way they're in here, it really just, the beginning ones, there's 3 requests to amend the urban growth area, the boundaries of that. And so they each start with the map, but then it's followed by what the applicant turned into the city. And some of them are pretty long, 10 pages long or so. So this first one, we're calling it proposal 2301. I'm on page 62. I'm sorry, 62 of the packet. This request was submitted by Dan Herring. It was actually submitted in 2022 to amend the urban growth boundary, adding 19.34 acres to be designated low density, single family residential land. So in the comprehensive plan, we have a chapter on land use, and we assign a future land use designation because everything in the urban growth area is not currently in the city limits, but being in the urban growth area means that one day, we might annex it. So when we do, we look at the future land use designation to help determine what the zoning would be if it were to be annexed into the city. So here's a map that was submitted with it. And I have also, let me see where I've got it, pulled up this other map that shows the city limits. And I used this at the last meeting when we were talking about annexation. The stuff in blue is in the city limits and the stuff in tan is the urban growth area. And so when you come over, let me move the map slightly, just get your bearings slightly better. You've got I-90 here on the bottom of the screen. You got up here in blue, you've got Thrush Street. It's this property right here. So it's abutting city limits, and the proposal is to add this property into the urban growth area. And the, let's see. Wanted to see if they had any other items in there, but moving on through the pages, this starts on page 65 and goes through 76. So their cover sheet requesting it. This is the petition, and it's filled out pretty good. It talks about, and I'm not going to go through this on all of them, but it says provide a detailed statement of what is proposed to be changed and why, anticipated impacts, a demonstration of why an existing comprehensive plan, goal, or policy or recommendation should be continued. So they provided some of the goals out of the land use chapter, which was great. A statement of how the amendment complies with communities or the comprehensive plans of community vision. So there's obviously a need for more housing, and that's what would end up happening here is if it was included in the urban growth area, they potentially come back for annexation for the purpose of building more housing. So I am not going to go through each of these. They're in the packet. There's a lot of information, and we will, if this is moved forward, we'll bring it back to you with just depicting the map change. Here's another map that they had provided. It just gives you a little bit different perspective. That site right there. And I'm just scrolling through to get to the next one because this includes several exhibits here.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So, because I spent a little time on this before. So what you're gonna go through all of these first, and then you're gonna ask for a motion on each one?
You can, or if you would like, as I go through, you could make a motion now and just get it over and done with. I've seen it done both ways.
I was just asking.
Yeah, actually, and it might be quicker, like while it's on your mind, just make the decision right now.
Yeah, can we get a ROM on how?
Councilmember Swartz?
Thank you. Can we get a rough idea on how many of these there are?
Well, in your packet, there's 10 proposals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you want to hear them all at once? I'd prefer to go one by one. What would we all like to do?
You know, let me make a recommendation. Maybe we could look at the three that are proposing to be added to the UGA. So you can see them kind of comprehensively and then make motions on those three and then I'll move on. Okay, so this next one is also a request to be added into the UGA. And here is the first map. And so in your packet on this is on page 77 of the packet. But this was submitted by Houston Aho to amend the urban growth boundary. It would add 162.31 acres. It would change the land use designation from resource lands agriculture irrigated to urban residential 2. These parcels are east and south of the Pelican Point neighborhood, south of Dune Lakes Road. And what they pointed out is this, they said, although unnecessary for consideration of the UGA expansion, because we're not really looking at what they're planning to do. It's just, do we want them in the urban growth area or not? But they did provide that the proposal is for the area to be used 22 acres for commercial area, 18 acres for open space, 35 acres for new streets and right of way, and 87 acres of single family residential to be divided into approximately 431 lots with an average size of around 8,000 square feet. So on this other map, just to give folks a little bit better on their bearings here, over slightly here. Doesn't move quickly here. It's this property right here. So you can. I think it's that one. No, there's two. So this first one is right here, and it's adjacent to the urban growth area, and I think most people are pretty familiar with Pelican Point area. There's several exhibits they've included as well. Okay, this one goes down for 2 tracks. Both of these, and then we've got the next one is all the property next to it. And then on this one, this goes through page 87. So they submitted the same petition explaining how they feel it meets the comprehensive goals. City staff has looked at it. They wrote up a very nice narrative. I'm not going to read this for everybody by any means, because I know that would make us stay here till 10 o'clock at night and nobody wants that. So let me get through these. Okay, and then this is the next one. Proposal 2303, and this is turned sideways. This one was also submitted by Houston Aho to amend the urban growth boundary, adding 638.24 acres. It also changed the land use designation from resource lands agriculture to urban residential 2. They're located predominantly between Sand Dunes Road Southeast, Dune Lakes Road Southeast, east of the Dune Lakes Planned Unit Development, and west of Potato Hill Road. And the applicant has proposed new residential development on these parcels. And well, I'll just go ahead and turn the map and make everyone a little bit dizzy here for a sec. Whoops, went too quick there. Okay, there we go. So this parcel has been included twice, but the whole point is that they want to include all of this land in the yellow. And then the first one was this piece up here, but one of their maps showed this one as well. So kind of have a general understanding of where this is. And now I'm going to scroll back. Sorry. Okay. So they turned in some pretty good information. Once again, very similar information about how it would provide more land for the housing that is much needed in the community. Some really good information. And then following this, there are a couple of, so we won't get into them right now, properties that are already in the UGA, but they are proposing to change the future land use designation. So those are the 3 proposals to be added into the urban growth area. If you want to talk through those, ask me any questions, or if you want to just make a motion that like say, yes, make a motion to add it to the docket. And I would ask you to refer to page 62 of your packet and just reference proposal 2301, 2302, 2303.
Councilmember Scott?
I can see that those are all watered areas right now from the circles. That does not make me a rocket scientist, but it does make me know that there's water there. Is that part of the negotiation or do we, obviously those houses are going to need water. There's going to need to be irrigated. Richard, you keep talking about shallow well access, and I don't know if that's pumped out of the lake down there by the freeway, or there's a couple places where water does get pumped right out of the lake. But can part of this discussion with these lots be who gets the water and that water right, or do they develop it into houses, sell the water right to somebody else, and then the city's on the hook to provide water that we don't have rights for? Is the water right part of this whole conversation?
So as far as being included in the UGA, I don't know if that's part of the conversation or not. As far as when development happens there, absolutely, it's going to be a conversation. I know when the Dune Lakes development first happened, that Jake Jacobson did receive a large water right many years ago. This would have been 20-ish, 25 years ago, something like that. We've actually had when we've been doing our research into possible available water rights in the area, we've looked into the water right, and there's some questions as to because he has not put that to beneficial use for multiple decades, whether how much of that water right can be perfected still. Those are legal questions. I don't know, but when development happens, absolutely, it's going to be a conversation. I don't know if they are currently irrigating out of the lake or if that is all being irrigated out of wells. They have proximity to the lake, so I don't, it could be either way. But absolutely, those will be conversations, and not only water, but sewer. There's going to be a lot of sewer infrastructure that would have to be put in there. We've got some lower areas that are, you're going to have lift stations and so on and so forth to make that work to get it into our force main out to the treatment plant. So
Would they be able to sell water rights right now before they developed it and then say, we're going to develop it, but we have no water rights?
Sure.
Can we keep that from happening? I mean, part of this
legally,
negotiation right now saying, if you want this, you have to guarantee that.
As part of this process, I don't think that's can be part of this process. I mean, if we want to do if they're willing and we want to do a pre-annexation agreement, a developer agreement, something like that reserves all, that can be done. But I don't know that that's part of this process of the UGA, adjusting the UGA boundary.
And actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because I had in my own notes that I wanted to refer you to Exhibit I, which we forgot to reference in the report itself. We had some last minute changes and didn't get it quite complete. But on page 190 of the packet, I'm sure you breezed through to there.
There were 198 pages.
I know, but on page 190 is what you've got before you right here. And this attachment was provided, you didn't know to refer to it, to help you determine whether to amend the urban growth area. And so there are some parameters that we need to look at. So criteria to approve UGA amendments, they're all described in this table, and then we listed the 3 amendment requests. So applications to expand should not result in a net increase in UGA acreage. If the city considers expansion in one location, it should pursue an equivalent or greater reduction in area elsewhere. UGA amendment applications that would increase development opportunities for industrial land should be prioritized over additional housing in the UGA. I'm just telling you what these are, and we're going to be looking into these. Logical boundaries for service delivery should also be considered as a priority. So with the water and sewer there, you know, where are the most logical places to extend if you're going to have the UGA expanded? Number 4, areas with existing urban densities that can be served with adequate infrastructure should be prioritized over areas that do not have urban or partially developed patterns and lack the ability to be served during the planning period. Number 5, applications considered as part of the comp plan update process should be those whose land use and or environmental impacts can be adequately analyzed and mitigated at a programmatic level and would not require a dedicated SEPA process. Proposed changes to land use should be generally compatible with surrounding land uses and have adequate public infrastructure to serve the proposed use. And all 3 of those did seem logical in regards to that number 6. And then in the Growth Management Act itself, it gives you some additional criteria. It should be in areas already characterized by urban growth where there's existing public facilities available to serve. Locate the growth in urbanized areas with existing public facilities and services. Expansion of the UGA is one of the last alternatives local government should consider when determining how to accommodate new growth. The UGA size must be based upon the growth management population projection made for the county by the Office of Financial Management. And that was all incorporated into the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2021. And then there's some guidance from the WAC. So any amendment to the UGA must be accompanied by an analysis of what capital facilities investments are necessary to ensure the adequate public facilities are provided. If new or upgraded facilities are necessary, counties and cities must amend the capital facilities and transportation elements to maintain consistency with the land use element. And I would note, I'm going to jump ahead to really quickly to, let me see, proposal 2309, and that was submitted by staff. And that's where we are requesting to make amendments to the capital improvement plan within the capital facilities plan appendix. So all the capital facilities were notated in an appendix later on, which I will bring this up again, but no, I didn't pull that one up, did I? No, I didn't pull that, but it's just part of the comp plan as an appendix. And then, oh goodness, let's see. I lose my spot by doing that. Looks like I may have. I know I went back to the wrong one. Here we are. The amended capital facilities must identify those new areas and how they're going to serve. Must include cost estimates to determine the amount of funding necessary to construct needed facilities. The capital facilities and transportation elements should identify what combination of new or existing funding will be necessary to develop the needed facilities. So you can see it's a lot about analyzing what's going to be required and what it would cost to do that. So
I know in a nutshell, I just want to not give up leverage. If there's something that we can, if water's the big deal, I know the property, I talked to the owner of the property who used to own the property right there north of 17, where a bunch of new homes went in. And he said that was sold with a domestic and agricultural water right. But I think that water right probably got sold to somebody else as part, that just makes that whole package. And I might be wrong, Mark, but that's what I was of the understanding. And now the city has to come up with more water, which we're already short of water rights to provide water to that, which already had water rights when it was being developed, and they got sold somewhere else, which I'm told is not uncommon. So I just want to make sure that if there's availability of water there and we can leverage, what decisions we make to have access to that, I don't want to see that leverage go away.
So currently in the city code, developers have 2 options. One is they can bring water rights to the city for their development. So if they have an existing water right, they can assign those to the city. We can go through a process to bring it into our portfolio to use that water right. Option B is they can pay a fee in lieu of bringing water rights that the city then puts into a fund that hopefully we can find and buy more water rights. Now, until last, oh, it hasn't been, was it last fall? Anyhow, where we adjusted our fee for that, we raised it up because our fee hadn't been adjusted for so long and it was really low. It was more profitable for somebody to go sell their water rights on the open market and pay our low fee versus handing those water rights over to the city. So we need to make sure that we're being vigilant and keeping that fee current so that if we leave it alone for too long and we know water prices are going to go up, that may end up happening again, unless we want to change the code where we say, you don't get to pay a fee in lieu of, you go find your own water. If you want to develop, you go find your own water right and bring it to the city as part of your development package. So that would be another option. It would be, I don't know. It would solve my headache, but at the same time, I don't know if they don't have an existing water right with that land, for them to try to find it on the open market would be, could be difficult, a difficult process for them and prevent, development in certain areas of town. So that's a possible solution. We got to make sure our fee is high enough so that they're not selling it out from underneath us. I'm just, if we want to raise it to make it even higher than market rate, maybe that would discourage again them selling it out from underneath us. Those are policies and decisions that need to be thought of and addressed, because I know for a fact in the past people were selling them on the open market because it was cheap. They made more money selling their water rights and then paying our low fee.
And if you're talking about leverage, I would note that with any property that's in the urban growth area, once you're talking about annexation, the city has the opportunity to enter into pre-annexation agreements where we say, if you want to come into the city limits, let's negotiate it, and you need to provide these things. You need to construct these infrastructure pieces that we're lacking if you want to be in the city limits, and you have that in place in order for them to even be allowed into the city limits. And you typically negotiate those between the city and the developer. Tonight, what we're looking at is just whether or not to analyze whether we want to add these areas into the urban growth area, but just kind of going through those criteria again. I would note that the analysis would probably take longer than we've got before the end of the year. And it might be one that you tell us to work on, but defer into next year to get those studies done appropriately, because you also do need to be looking at whether, as you know, when we adopted it, there were some recommendations to reduce the urban growth area. And so one of those criteria was like, if you're going to add more to it, are you going to reduce it somewhere else? So we need to have some serious conversations about that, because once it gets through you guys, this would go to the county commissioners as well and the state. And there's potential that they could just reject it all outright, even if city council said, yeah, we want to just add those areas in. I think the smaller one over in May Valley is a little more possible to do within this year's time frame to analyze it. The very large ones near Pelican Point could take a lot longer to look at what infrastructure requirements are necessary. So just something to take into consideration.
I know I'd sure like the water right to be part of any initial conversation that, it's negotiable, but, is part of the negotiation.
Councilmember Hunter? No.
So how many comments do they have? Only two, maybe. So one, no, it's fine. It was David.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would make the one comment in regard to the Dune Lake property. I'm not going to get in the weeds about David's water. But it is in the crisis of water, what they do have there is lots of irrigation opportunities for lawns. He already has irrigation water out of the lake for Dune Lake. So, I mean, he's basically contiguous. So that solves the irrigation. I think the solve there is the solve for the irrigation portion of residential development. I would also say, yes, I mean, water rights are critical. I was going to say, and thank you, Richard, for going into, we were too cheap. I mean, if we wanted people to give us water, we were so undervalued. Why would you? And it is America, so we should be able to do what we want to do. So, but what I would say is this. I think we have some analysis. That was the concern that I had before, which, by the way, we didn't adopt. All of us didn't adopt this comprehensive plan. We are living by it, and we want to amend it, and we want to look at it and analyze it. But what I would say is this, we are having a lot of growth right now, and I'm not afraid to try to do this analysis, because I think we owe some of the analysis to our problems of looking how to acquire water, get water, and irrigate. And this is a prime project of being able to create what we don't have, are locations where we can get to that surface water. There are other places, don't get me wrong, but this one is already got some of that infrastructure in place. And I would like so what I'm prepared to do, and I would agree that the small one in May Valley, it's already contiguous to the city. So I'm prepared to make a motion to, I guess what I'm making a motion is to add it to the docket proposal. Do I have to do each one individually?
You can list.
Can I do them all together?
Three at once, yeah.
Yes, to make a motion to add to the docket proposal 2301, 2302, and 2303.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions from city council? I do have one question. I'm in looking at these, especially the Dune Lakes, and I can't remember about the May Valley. They're all potential single family housing developments, which were
So
we're low on housing inventory, period, but we need more than just single housing. So when does that conversation come up? Because this is just adding it to our UGA, but we're not
Yes.
agreeing to.
So at the time we were to go ahead and present it back to you, we could assign what the future land use designation is and have it be one that would accommodate. So when you annex, you then zone it. So we want to look to make sure we could have zoning that would allow for multifamily like R3. But there are going to be more conversations occurring because the state just passed all this legislation that basically says you've got to allow a fourplex in single family zones. So we, as part of the development code update, rewrite, say it correctly, we will be incorporating the new state law into the code. Like, this is what they're telling us we got to do moving forward. So we want to make sure that the future land use designations allow for the right zoning.
Okay.
And we will do that at the next meeting on this.
Okay, and then to clarify, we're just adding this to the docket. We're just one of many other places it passes through, though, is my understanding. And it goes to county, then it goes to
Yeah,
state.
ultimately, you guys would be the adopting entity for all the other docket items. You would say, yes, we're changing the comp plan. The UGA amendments themselves go to the county and then it all goes to the state. So, yeah.
All right, so this is just one of a few stops.
Yeah, it's like the first step.
Council member Schwartz.
Yeah, just the curiosity, during this process, because it does have to go to the county, what interface happens between us and the county during all of this?
Leading up to it. I mean, we just let them know it's coming and they're going to have it coming for their own docket, and we just provide them the same information and then the actual maps and information providing how it meets all those criteria.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the larger picture here, obviously to accommodate all of the above, plus what I probably anticipate happening in May Valley and all of that. That's going to take a heavy lift only on our part. So making sure we have those supporting numbers is crucial. And I think it would be a lot easier if we work together with them on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
If there's an opportunity to set that up, I'd love to see it happen.
Absolutely, we can do that.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second to add resolutions 2301, 2302, and 2303 to the docket. I said that correctly.
You did.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed or any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Okay, so the next one we're gonna look at is, doesn't move the way I want it to. Property that is already in the urban growth area, but they're looking to change the future land use designation. Let me get back to it. And on this one, I'm also gonna show you the zoning map. Okay, so I'm having fun navigating this map. I'm moving slowly here, but. Oh. Thank you. Well, there you go. He didn't have to watch me navigate the map. I'm gonna go back to. So this is a couple of parcels and it's along West Lake and West Shore. I'm gonna show you this map as well. But this is proposal 2304. It starts on page 98 of your packet. Make sure I've got this right. Yeah, this request was submitted by Serge Wachowski and Cameron Jones. The applicants are requesting a land use designation change from residential medium to gateway commercial. What that would allow would be the zoning to go from R2 to C2 commercial. And I'm going to show you the zoning map. And it's this property right here. It's a couple of properties and you can see a portion of it is single family future zoning and commercial zoning. So what they'd like to do is change the future land use designation so that they could zone it to be red, which is commercial, and provide for some additional opportunities. And when you look through the packet, they describe how they feel there's a need for commercial property out there. And that little strip of land along there is not necessarily ideal. Just showing it to you again. I think we all know that in this area, there's probably a lot of desire to not have to go on the bridge and go across into town to get a gallon of milk or maybe stop at a local coffee shop or something of that nature. So this says the proposed change will increase the amount of commercially zoned property in the May Valley area by approximately 2.4 acres. It's adjacent to property that's zoned commercial, as I just showed you. It would just allow for more of that commercial type of use to occur. It's one that staff feels is meets the criteria and would be, it makes a lot of sense, honestly. And I feel like that one's kind of self-explanatory. So I'm here's an aerial photo that they submitted, just showing you the property. And they also submitted a lot more information, some soils reports. I'll scroll through this. And if they get the proposed future land use change, they will then come back and submit for, or go through the process for the rezone. This might be the one that already submitted their rezone request. Here's another just example. Current future land use designation, medium density residential. They want it to be changed to gateway commercial so that will allow for that different zoning. I want to make sure I didn't skip past. Okay. This is another lengthy one and it goes through page 125. So we're almost there. Okay. This next one is proposal 2305. This is page 126. It goes through page 137. I believe this is the one that Mr. Alvarado was speaking to earlier. This map is also turned sideways. I'm not going to change it because last time you saw me have to keep pushing that button over and over, but north is this direction. This is Central Drive. This is Schmulligans. Is that the proper name? This is the park, Paul Lozier Field. And so we're talking about this property right here. So the request was submitted by Sean Jenks. The applicant is requesting to change the land use designation from medium density residential, which would allow for the zoning of R2 single and 2 family residential. They'd like the future land use designation to be high density residential, which would allow for a zone change to R3 multifamily. And then they could do multifamily in there. It's 0.63 acres located on Evelyn Drive across the street from the park. And I just described the location of that. So that one, as you can see on this, well, hopefully you can see it. There are some multifamily projects already around it. So this one seems to make some good sense as well. And as we've discussed earlier in the meeting and brought up by Deputy Mayor Martinez, there is a need for multifamily housing. So they gave some supplemental documentation as well. And here's another aerial photo that shows a little bit better the multifamily surrounding it to the south and east. And they gave some information, referring to the zoning, or I'm sorry, the future land use designation. This page that they submitted comes out of the comprehensive plan land use chapter. So they put a lot of good research into this, and he already spoke to it, and he provided some goals and policies that it would also achieve. And also provided information on the purpose of the zoning districts and the residential zones. So very good information there. Staff supports that one as well. This next one was submitted by the Public Works Department. It's
So
proposal-
Kirsten, is that the last of the land use designation?
Yes, actually. Yep.
Maybe
If
we
you
could
wanted
do
to,
Yeah, get those two out of the way.
you sure could. Thank you for the reminder.
Sorry, I just.
No.
Yeah.
Talking
Let's-
about
yep.
the same stuff all the time.
Yep.
So we've heard the presentation on 2304 and 2305. Any questions from council? So I would entertain a motion.
I so move we put it on the docket. Proposals 2304 and 2305.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those two pass.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Next.
The next one is 2306, and this was submitted by Public Works, as I said, and it starts on page 138 and goes through 186. So this was a really detailed proposal put forward, and it lists all of the proposed changes, and this is a text amendment or several text amendments. So to begin, to amend the transportation section 6.62 and 6.3 to conform to the road standards to conform the road standards to FFC street classifications. The next request is to update the city street classifications map, update the existing active transportation facilities map, update the May Valley study with final results, update the 20-year TIP transportation improvement plan, update the road system improvement projects map, update the future trails, sidewalk connections and bike lanes map, update the 20-year active transportation, and update the chart 635, the active transportation system improvement project map. And then on page 646, consider adding information about sources, cycles, and eligibility for grants and transportation projects. And finally, identify and provide ability for staff to update the 2014 future streets map annually. So if you guys say go ahead and go forward, I'll just turn this back over to the person who proposed it and let them make all the text edits to it. And we'll show it in track changes. And I will try to scroll through to the next section, but staff feels those are appropriate changes to make and reference current studies and information.
The changes with and track changes, so we can kind of see what was.
Yeah, when it comes back. So he included all of the sections that would be specifically changed, but let's just say bike signals, which wasn't listed, or right here, active transportation system. We'd just show in track changes when it came back to you. So you would see, even if it was like one sentence was changed, what that would be. And we would point that out in the staff report. As you can see, I like to share page numbers and point things out. I don't want you guys to miss out on anything. So, and this is something you're going to see every year from us, is the request to update all of the 6-year TIPs or CIPs, I should say. So
I have a question real quick on
Councilmember Scott. Didn't push your button, man. You guys getting loose.
Who wrote this?
Who-
Who's the author of this document?
Of this document,
Yep.
well, this section, I believe, was put together by Petite. They were one of the consultants when the comprehensive plan was written. I believe Burke was the main contractor or consultant on the project, and they had subs, and I believe Petite did the anything related to transportation. They developed all that work.
Do we give them any guidelines or parameters that say this is the direction we want to go? Or do they, how does this document and their recommendations reflect us?
Well, I wasn't part of this specific one, but typically what you do is you make sure you're conforming to the state requirements for what you put into a comprehensive plan. They want us to be planning out over the horizon. And if we've analyzed and looked like we're planning to grow into these urban growth areas,
Mhm.
the boundaries that we've just talked about, what will it take to provide the infrastructure? And one of those is transportation needs. And so they also looked at the density, you know, so if something has a future land use designation, that would be single family zoning. They kind of calculate how many new residents could actually fit into that area and what the density is. So we just give them those parameters, and then they do public outreach. And I don't, do you recall by any chance, Richard, if
The
there was,
transportation element portion.
yeah, sorry to catch up guard. I'm curious if we did anything specific to Moses Lake in crafting this chapter that you're aware of, and maybe you're not.
So I know when this was all happening, we had some meetings with Petite. Again, they were talking about, you know, this is the UGA. What kind of densities do you think? Do you have any anything? You know, they basically went back through and looked at, you know, our 6-year TIP. They looked at any traffic studies, anything that had been developed in the like previous 15 or 20 years of you know, everything from, you know, have you looked at another bridge? Have you looked at a bike path here? You know, so all of those things, we tried to provide them with all of that information, and then they compiled into this future streets section, transportation element. So
Okay, I just want to make sure that when we get this input, that it still has the flavor of Moses Lake and not, you know.
Yeah, so
Well,
this,
but I'm saying, but I mean, did
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
as long as.
yeah, this information is from 2021, the 2021 adopted comp plan. It's already developed, and we're just proposing some edits to it to reflect current work.
All right.
But typically, you know, when this stuff is developed, the consultant will come in and sit down with city staff
Okay,
and find out as much as they can from staff about where you're proposing to develop. And then they need to pull in the planners, the engineers, and everybody working on the project to plan for growth appropriately. I mean, that's what this document is. How are we going to grow in the next 20 years?
Okay.
How do we make sure we've got all the services available to the growing population and for our existing community members?
Councilmember Schwartz.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm piggybacking a little bit on what Dave was suggesting there, but I do have a question as to you know, how we develop the parameters in which we're having any of these discussions. As you were quickly scrolling through this, I think Judy and I both picked up on one particular thing, which was the road diet, and it got me to thinking, you know, when we as a government body are addressing something, it's usually an issue that's been raised by the public at large, or at least that's my understanding of what we're doing here. So like when it comes to the road diet, for instance, can you give me the genesis of that whole idea and how it got to Moses Lake? Because I ride a bike, for instance. I also drive a car, but I don't particularly use the bike paths that are there. And I don't see that there are a great number of people using the bike paths. Now, if there was somebody on the council once upon a time who said, it is my mission in life to make sure that there's a 40% increase in bike usage in Moses Lake because that's great for the community, I would like to see those records, or if there was a group of concerned citizens who came and said, this is what we want. Or if it was simply somebody along the line saying, well, road diets are a great thing that somebody came up with somewhere. And so here you go, that we're just going to put this in and you can try it out. So could we, as far as their discussions about stuff like that, I think it would save a lot of time if we just said, do we even want that to start with?
And I, as we all know, I wasn't here at the time and I don't know the genesis of how that got in there, but I think it's something to consider. We're not proposing to change any references to that right now, but I think if somebody were to come along and want a more narrow road or to change up the existing streets to be more boulevard-like or have parking and take a lane away or whatever, we'd have bigger conversations. This just would support, if it's in the comprehensive plan, it just supports the ability to do that in the future. But there is a lot of data out there about whether in certain cities, you have to do your own analysis about whether it's appropriate on a specific street. What are the conditions around it? And I know that when I first arrived last year, that the mayor and some staff had gone to a conference on the west side that was talking about some of these very topics, and some of it comes down to safety. So sometimes that's the reason you want to do it. If there's a lot of accidents on, say, like a 4-lane highway that doesn't have a center turn lane, sometimes it makes sense to narrow that down to 2 lanes with a center lane the whole way. So you've got left turn bays. And so sometimes like the safety component is a reason you might want to do something that might be called a road diet, but I don't necessarily think that term, it doesn't seem to be a good flavor and maybe not one that should be used. Just like, hey, what makes sense safety wise on this stretch of road?
It's not a good flavor here in Moses Lake.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the term road diet. Yeah, it instantly creates frustration, irritation, and that's just putting it mildly.
I don't think that's
Right.
a good term to use. personally.
Or on Division Street, for instance, it's frustrating to me, and this happens frequently. Somebody will drive 25 to 35 or 30 miles an hour in front of me, and as I'm driving behind them, I have a lot of time to gaze around, and I can see where we've chip sealed over the old lines that were on the road that would have allowed me to pass that person. And so it is, and then I see 0 people using the bike lanes at the same time, and it's like, what are we doing here? Who came up with this idea, and where were the people in Moses Lake who said, this is the best thing since sliced bread, we should do this?
So they've been, the term road diet, it's an old term, right? And I understand that a lot of people think it's a bad word. They're trying to, there's some rebranding efforts going on about right sizing of roads. So the main things in the wisdom of our city fathers here in the downtown corridor and in a lot of these areas, we ended up with these really wide right of ways. You just look right down the road here. You got 4 lanes. And for actual vehicle movements, we don't need that much road to move the number of cars that use this roadway. Having extra wide roads and extra lanes, like Kirsten was saying, the studies they've been studying it for 40 years now or more. It leads to higher speeds, and it leads to more potential conflicts between drivers, people changing lanes, people, somebody stopping to turn left and somebody's not paying attention, so they run in the back of them. If there was a center turn lane, that accident may have been avoided. In different areas of town, what is your goal? That's something that I know the mayor went to this thing. How do you create a city where you're trying to have people engage and move in your city, or are you just trying to move them through? Are you just trying to move bodies through and past? If we're trying to create a downtown shopping environment or something like that, do we really want to make it as easy as possible to people to go and buy as fast as they can and never see what's around. So there's a lot of opportunities. Yes, Division was a 4-lane road for many years. And we had, we did have accident profiles along there of side swipes, of rear endings, of those types of things that, you know, people trying to race. We would get a lot of complaints on Division Street, just like in some other areas of town. We still get complaints. People are driving way too fast. You know, we did some speed studies before we did the road diet. We did some speed studies along there, and the average speed along there was 10 to 15 miles an hour above the speed limit. And we had some high flyers going through there that we tracked some people that were going 80 miles an hour, you know, in the middle of, you know, at
Right.
certain times of the day or whatever.
But what I'm seeing also is, again, I drive this road regularly, and what
I
will
understand.
witness is the stretch of road between downtown and Nelson Road.
Mhm.
Again, it's regularly traveled by people going 25 to 30 miles an hour. So 5 to 10 miles under the speed limit. So you'll get a backup of, say, 3 or 4 cars behind those people. As soon as the slow person gets off, guess what happens? Everybody speeds way up to like 50 because they felt like, well, we had to drive 25 this whole time. I see it happen. Richard. The other thing is,
I get it.
is because there's a middle lane in the road. What is also happening is people are passing in that lane, and also what they're doing is they're entering the road and pulling into that lane, which is illegal. And I've had 2 or 3 times where people have done that, where they turned off a Hill Street into the middle lane, and I'm trying to turn the other way, and we almost ran into each other. So I get the point, but we could have saved ourselves a lot of time and effort. I will ask again, who are the people in Moses Lake from the general public who wanted this to happen? Or who are the people who would have been very upset with us if we had not done anything and just left it 4 lanes?
So at the time, we were working with our, again, this has been a while back, but at the time we were working with our local Trails and Paths community group that were trying to create more opportunities to create links between certain residential areas and the downtown and those types of things. And so in the planning document that was developed long ago, this is early 2000s, that road was designated as a future, they wanted to create a link there. And so Gary Harr at the time, working with our Public Works Department and with our Trails team and all that kind of thing, said, okay, when we get ready to chip seal Division Street, we can just paint it the other way and create this corridor. And so that was the decision that was made. And I'm trying to remember what year that was. It was probably 2010, 11. It's been that way for about a decade now, if I remember right.
Correct.
So anyhow, as far as I can recall, that was the decision process at the time.
And I don't want to beat this issue to death, but the reason I bring it up is I think it's indicative of some of the pitfalls we've run into in planning in the past. And again, it has to do with a lot of things that were talked about tonight as far as the code update and fees and things of that nature. I think that there are 7 people up here who are pretty competent and can understand some of the higher level thinking that goes into these decisions. What is it we're trying to do? You know, are we trying to make construction costs go down? Are we trying to make the permitting process be shorter? Are we trying to make traffic move through the city quickly? You know, if you ask those types of questions as we move through this, it will save a lot of time in the process rather than just saying, well, here's like 5 ideas that the state had, and then, you know, SCJ Alliance put these ones in here. Then we start having a conversation in that box, and we haven't even had the opportunity to decide that that's the box we want to have the conversation in to begin with. And so I think we just need to really be mindful of what we're doing here and who's throwing these suggestions at us, and if we even have to do them. So that's my 2 cents on it. I'm done. Thanks.
Councilmember Madewell.
So I'm going to be a little ornery. I think we need to do a bike study to see how many bikes are actually being ridden around town where we need to make all of these decisions. I'm with Dustin on this. Another thing, I don't go downtown on Third Avenue because there's no place to park. And I hear that from a lot of people. They don't want to go downtown because you can't park anywhere. And so I think that's something that we need to consider when we're talking, whatever we want to call it, the road diet or whatever, streets. I'm having a hard time with it. Thanks.
So we've 3-4 months ago, I went and spoke with the Downtown Business Association. Talking to them expressly about, we need to do some maintenance on these downtown streets as far as another chip seal or overlay if we can afford it or something like that. And so the purpose of the conversation was, okay, when we get done here, we're gonna have black asphalt with no stripes on it. There are some options that we can do to make the lane configurations down here different. And so as the Downtown Business Association, what would you like? What would you like to see that we can make some recommendations on if we want to make some changes? Some things that we've had a couple of meetings with we pulled together I guess a little focus group, if you want to call it that, of volunteers from the Downtown Business Association to talk about this. We laid out some various things saying, okay, we can leave it 4-lane. We can do something different. We can go 3 lanes and we can have bike lanes if that's what you think. If you think you want to encourage more bike traffic downtown, great. Or we can do 3 lanes and do angle parking. That could create a certain increase in parking availability in the downtown area. And so we've been going through, like I said, we've had a couple of meetings. We're hopefully going to get to the point where we have some maps from this little focus group that we can then take back to the whole Downtown Business Association to see if they're all like it. But we have certain streets where they're saying we want all angle parking. On a couple other streets, it's probably a better idea to maybe have a bike lane for this particular to connect these other 2 biking areas. And so there's some other areas where so we're coming up with these options. We're working with the Downtown Business Association to try to get their input and their desires for the landscape in front of their businesses. So, I don't want to, as an engineer and as a citizen of Moses Lake, I want it to make sense. I want it to work well, to be safe. I want it to give us the traffic profile that is appropriate for the roadway. And sometimes if the road is too wide and too comfortable, people drive too fast, and then it's less safe than it could otherwise be. So and I will make those recommendations. It's ultimately it's not my I don't approve the budget. So ultimately, it's not my decision to be able to fund the project, but I will make those recommendations when I feel it's when we, as a Public Works Department, when we feel it's appropriate. But at the same time, we want to work with the community to get their input on what they feel is best in the downtown area. All of these changes that we're proposing and talking to them about, they will all make these streets more functional and a little safer. And if they're happy with it, I'm happy with it. I don't care.
Well, I appreciate you having those conversations because I recall seeing them, and I think you have one coming up again, don't you? the
We
downtown
we're
business
trying to
district.
arrange another meeting here, hopefully in August, to meet with them again.
So my question then is, you get the input, do we get the final say of how it's striped, or is that the Public Works Department that makes the final decision? Because I think that's what I'm hearing from council member Swartz.
There-
And I think that I think most of us would agree, we want some say in some of these things
The-
instead
the-
of it just being
The plan.
right on our
was-
lap.
The plan was and still is, after I get done working with the Downtown Business Association and we come up with what they're happy with, then we would bring that and present it to council and saying, based on our conversations and needs, this is what we're proposing and why. And try to get council support so that when we come to you with a budget request to do all this work downtown, that hopefully it will be approved and not denied. Because ultimately, I can't do any of these projects if you don't approve the budget.
Right, thank you. So
And I
trying to
would
get
note
back
that,
to this.
yeah, I appreciate all
this
of
is
the
good
conversation.
But I don't think that it has to do specifically with this.
Yeah, and honestly, this could like lead into maybe some comp plan amendments for
Yes.
next year. This gives us some direction for some specific projects too, but regarding just this particular proposal, that references, there's no plans to change anything about the road diet or anything. It was within the chapter being proposed for edit. So the only thing we are looking to change is the future trails, sidewalk connections and bike lanes map to just be current with what exists right now. So good feedback for some more conversations to come, obviously.
Yeah.
Probably some more guidance for staff moving forward.
Councilmember Swartz?
So do we need a?
Yeah,
we're
I
trying
just
to get a
wanna-
motion, right?
On this one, because the next two they're kind of text and land use map at once, so, yeah.
So I'd entertain a motion if the council chooses to, on proposal 2306.
I so move we adopt 2306 to have the comp plan reflect reality. I think is what we're saying.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Hey,
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right. On to the next proposal.
Okay, so proposal 2307 is submitted by the planning division. It's a request to amend text and the maps in the plan related to references to removing the Area 5 UGA. So a decision was made last year to leave it alone. So we've identified, but we didn't do it in track changes. The Appendix A was drafted up specifically separately with the proposed UGA boundary amendments. So we could amend it. I wasn't here at the time, but I was told it was done that way to amend it easier if the UGA boundary discussion didn't work out. So that is the proposal. And so what was included in the packet was really just a map of the UGA. And so we've already identified the text amendments and we would come back to just remove that. And then I would think that you could also in the same motion potentially consider proposal 2308. We didn't actually put together the areas we want to change, but the planning division wants to make some map amendments to what is designated gateway commercial. We had staff driving around and looking at it, for instance, like the Broadway extended going over 17 is designated gateway commercial. And I think what they had done was just kind of identified any areas where people were entering the city limits, but that didn't feel like an area that should potentially be that. And we're looking at maybe reducing or slightly changing some of the other areas of gateway commercial. So those are two that you could do in one motion, or you could separate them out if you wanted to consider those.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Question on Area 5. Can you just clarify what you said there? You said take it out.
Remove references to, okay, the whole goal is to not say we're removing UGA 5.
Okay.
Yeah, to reverse it. So
That
we're not going to
a lot
say,
of wasted work.
yeah, But the thing about the appendix is there's more to it than just UGA 5 in there. So, but we'll just remove that reference.
I'm prepared to make a motion to add 2307 and 2308 to the docket.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We're on to 2309.
So this is another one submitted by the planning division. It's a request to amend the capital improvement plan within the capital facilities plan appendix. And so this page, exhibit H, is I don't know how many people are following along at this point, but it is page 189. And this is where we list out all of the planned capital projects at the time this was developed. And so we just want to update anything, if we've updated anything annually, like any 6-year plans, we just want to put in the most current ones. And this also bleeds into 2310. We had proposed removing references to the transitional center, and I think it might actually be transformational campus, because it points out like a $10 million budget for that project. And so we want to just remove that from potential future costs and then have different discussions on those needs in the future. So we got some of the labeling a little bit mixed up at the very end of this, and I apologize for that. That oversight. We had actually 2 different versions and we uploaded the wrong one, and then it moves into exhibit I, which we already looked at, which was the criteria for updating the urban growth area. So those are the final proposals. And if you have any questions for me on either of those, let me know. And honestly, 2310 just kind of lumps into 2309, because if you're updating the capital facilities plan, you're going to be, we could potentially remove reference to the transformational center.
Any questions from the council? I'd entertain a motion for 2309 and 2310 if council chooses.
I'll make the motion to add proposal 2309 and proposal 2310 to the docket.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Right, motion carries. So we are done.
We're complete. I appreciate your time and your patience. And it turned out that it's good for you guys to have enough time on this agenda to like dive into each of these. So thank you.
I think there was some good conversation that happened that I'm sure will carry into further conversation.
Yes.
So with that, we are on to administrative reports.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have 2. Captain Sands, were you going to say anything about National Night Out?
I could have heard. Great. I'd actually just like to talk about UGA and water for a few. So we out, you're fired. We actually do have National Night Out on August 1st, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I think Captain Williams has deduced that he's the one that's going to be in the tank. Doug has decided he would do it in the crime dog suit, but that would weigh roughly 4,000 pounds when it gets wet. So come out, we'll have hot dogs, maybe corn dogs because it's National Night Out, not Healthy Night Out. So live a little and hope to see you there.
Sorry, I had to ask him to speak. Next time I'll think. I want to read one more thing. I received this email this morning. He doesn't know I'm going to read it, but I'm going to read it anyway. This is a kudos for Chief Bastian. The email says, I just wanted to give a shout out to Fire Chief Bastian. Was traveling on 990 this morning, was first on scene of a serious single vehicle rollover crash. Chief Bastian was also traveling and observed the crash. This lady said she stopped to help. Chief Bastian turned around, did the right thing, came back and helped. She said he calmly took charge and was able to keep everyone safe while we waited for first responders to arrive, which was about 30 minutes later. Then she goes on to say she's an RN. She's used to the chaos of the inpatient environment, but was completely out of her element in this situation. I'm grateful he chose to turn around and help. And so I just want to give a shout out to Chief Bastion for his work. And for representing the city and the fire department well. So Deputy Mayor, I believe that's it for staff reports.
We'll move right along to council committee reports. Councilmember Swartz.
I have nothing much other than there was a Sister City meeting on Sunday. Oh, Saturday. Okay. Did I not get an invitation or did I just totally miss that? Okay. Guilty as charged. Keep that in mind when you're voting next time. No, but I did read the report briefly and we are continuing with the monument in the park, which I'm super excited about. So hopefully we can see something on that soon. That's all I have.
Councilmember Meadwell.
I attended the solid waste committee meeting, Grant County. And it was interesting. There were a couple of fires and they were started by lithium batteries. And so they're asking that one place we can take them if we get the information out is to Staples. They will, but it's a real hazard to staff as well. And so they were real concerned about that. And so I was asked about the phase 4 construction and there's been no monies allocated for that yet. And so anyway, just encouraging people to please take their lithium batteries, don't drop them in the garbage can, take them to Staples or find another place to take them. But anyway, not there.
Thank you. Councilmember Fancher.
So we did have, you already forgot we had a CMP meeting today. No, but we covered it all today. It wasn't nearly as in-depth as this was. So no, it was good. And then at an EDC meeting, the Grant County Economic Development Council meeting, really good presentation. Actually, the Washington State Potato Commission gave the presentation and it was interesting to hear where that ag is going, as well as some of everybody's got competition. And transportation is hitting them pretty hard, transportation costs and stuff. So, but it was pretty interesting to hear and how they're surviving also. So.
Councilmember Skog. Briefly, Board of Health, I know I've talked about it a couple times, but it finally is up on the website where you can track the blue-green algae if you're looking to go boating. It's actually difficult to find, but if you go to the health department, our Grant County Health District website, type in blue-green algae, you will eventually get there. And that way you can decide where you want to go boating and avoid any toxic algae. Watershed Council was canceled for July. We will reconvene in August. And then the ad hoc homeless committee meeting, the Grant County Homeless and Housing Task Force meeting that took place out at the Fishbowl. I now know where the Fishbowl is. We had a lot of service providers there. And to me, it sounded like there was a lot of potential repeat of services, but it sounds to me that they do talk to each other, or there is some way to ensure that, this customer that might have spoken to this particular group, that this other organization is somehow aware of them. I always thought that there could be a potential for misuse or abuse of services. What I found most interesting is that there are more resources for homeless people to get into housing than people who are that close to becoming homeless. So, I mean, we're still lacking the resources to help prevent homelessness. That's mental health, drug addiction recovery. But I'm amazed that if you're homeless, you're gonna have a place to stay more than likely than somebody who has just, is on their last month and not sure if they're gonna pay rent the next day. So I found that actually astounding that it's you basically need to allow yourself to be homeless in order to access services. So a little depressing to me. And so when we talk about the UGA and housing and single family housing, and I appreciate some of the work that has occurred at the legislative level to increase density, because I have a feeling, we know in this community we lack some of that middle housing, which I know isn't necessarily a nice or a good term that people like, but that's the reality. So yeah. So anyway, those are my thoughts. So I appreciate everybody sticking with us in this long council meeting. We are adjourned as far as the public meeting goes, but we will be going into executive session for 30 minutes to consider the price at which real estate will be offered for sale, to discuss qualifications of applicants for public employment and potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, subsection C, G, and I. This meeting is adjourned following the session at hopefully 9:35. Our next regular council meeting is August 8th. I encourage you to attend. Thank you.